Where does the fear of driving come from? Well, in this video, we're going to explore this because if you're one of those people who has suddenly developed a fear of driving and it just makes no sense whatsoever, and you're thinking, where did this come from? How come I've been driving for years and years and years and I've never had any problems, and now I can't drive on highways, I can't drive over bridges, I can't drive on my own. Where did this problem come from? Well, let me explain. My name's Paul and I work online with people all over the world to help them overcome their fear of driving. And this is one of the top things people ask. They say, look, I just want to know, why have I got this problem? How come all of a sudden, out of the blue, I just can't drive and I've been doing it for decades? Well, let me explain. As I always say in my videos, driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving. And what's happening, the reason it came out of the blue is because it hasn't come out of the blue. You've actually had this problem all of your life, but you just didn't realise it. So how does that work? Well, it's what we call symptom substitution. What this is that when you were young, something would have happened that gave you a problem. The most common time for this to happen is between the ages of 2 and 18. Most of the time it's between about 2 and 8, and that's because when you get to roughly 8 years old, the way your mind works changes, and it's almost as though it locks off whatever it's learnt up until then. And although you still develop and learn new skills, pretty much by the time you're 8 years old, your life has been decided. But we don't have to get too sidetracked with that. Let's have a look at what symptom substitution is. So let me give you an example of someone I worked with once whose fear of driving came from when they were locked in a cupboard at school. Now this is actually quite a common one, and as I talk about this, there is a small chance you may even start to have memories of something similar that happened to you as a child. This client of mine was now in his 40s and he'd never had a problem driving until recently, when he just started panicking every time he drove away from home. He was fine for about a mile or two around his house, but as soon as you got further away than that, he'd start to get nervous and shake, and he'd have sweaty palms, his stomach would ache, his head would ache. And if you've got a fear of driving, you can no doubt relate to some of those problems. So what had happened is, when he was about 5 years old at school, he'd been messing around one day and he'd been really annoying the teacher. So the teacher had locked him in a cupboard. Now that had given him a panic attack because he was nervous about being locked in a cupboard. Years later, that had changed, so instead of being nervous about being locked in a cupboard, that same problem had morphed into that whenever he spoke to girls at school, he would get really scared and shy, and his face would go bright red. That then changed into another problem, that when he left school, he had trouble in job interviews because of his shyness. That then led to another problem, where when he was in an office, he would get nervous anytime there were lots of people in the office. That then led to his fear of driving, because when he was surrounded by people on the road, he was reliving that memory of being a child. So you see how that's linked to his past, how the symptom has changed from one thing to another. And this is why I always say driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving. I can promise you that if you go out taking driving lessons, having CBT, where they sit talking to you about, do you know how safe driving is, and did you know that so many people drive a day and only 0.1% have crashes, that stuff is rubbish because it's got nothing to do with that. That is when amateurs who don't know what they're doing work on the symptoms. It's nothing to do with the symptom, because what you need to understand, the reason your problem came out of nowhere, came out of the blue, is because it didn't. You've had this problem your whole life, and it's just morphed and changed from one thing to another. And it's really fascinating when I work with clients and they realise this. They realise that, hold on a minute, so you're telling me that driving was because of that thing about being in an office, and that was because of the interview, and that was because of the school, and that was because of the day I messed around at school when I was locked in a cupboard. Now remember, this does not have to make any sense. You might think, well, what's being locked in a cupboard got to do with driving? Nothing, that's the thing. You had a problem years ago, and as you grew up, your problem grew up with you. I mean, think about it. Imagine now, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, would you be able to go back to school and sit in the same little tiny chair at the same tiny desk that you did when you were 5 years old? Well, of course not. You'd have trouble fitting in there, and you might look a bit weird being a 40-year-old man sitting in a room full of kids trying to write with a crayon. Well, this is the thing. As you grow up, your problem grows up. So you see, when people ask the question, where did my fear of driving come from? It's because of something that happened years and years and years ago, and it doesn't need to make any sense. I always say to people, look, who cares about it making sense? This problem lives in your unconscious mind, where logic and sense plays no part. It doesn't work like that. Imagine that you've had the problem since you were a child, and it's simply grown and adapted in the same way that you've grown and adapted. So this is why working on driving will do nothing. Driving lessons for driving anxiety will do nothing. And again, I know this because not only am I an online therapist with qualifications in all sorts like hypnosis, NLP, psychotherapy, counselling, all these things and more, I also spent over 20 years as a driving instructor, and I trained hundreds of driving instructors and over 1,000 people to drive. So I know that what you do in driving lessons is going to do nothing to touch driving anxiety. Now let's move on to something that people often say, well, you're wrong because I watched your videos and I had a fear of driving and I got rid of it by taking lessons and by pushing through, so I don't understand why you say you can't do that. Well, if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll know what I'm about to say. Unfortunately, you haven't got rid of the problem. All you've done is moved it elsewhere, because the whole point of this video is that your problem changes and grows over time. So you see, what happens is your mind is screaming out for help. It's saying, please help me, you've got this problem, you need to sort it out. So it gives you a fear of driving as a way of saying, get me help, I need help. And if you don't listen to it, if you just push through and you get these expert or so-called expert driving instructors, I can fix your driving anxiety, and then people say, wow, it worked, you got rid of my problem. No, all they've done is pushed your problem elsewhere. What can happen is when the problem changes, it actually gets worse. So they haven't got rid of your fear of driving. You didn't defeat it. And I'd like to stress this point. You do not conquer driving. You do not beat a fear of driving. You don't fix driving anxiety. Anyone who talks about conquering things is an idiot, because you don't conquer it. That gives the impression that you're fighting it, that it's an evil part of you that you're trying to beat and put down and stop. No, this part of you that is giving you driving anxiety is a friendly, helpful part. The reason it's giving you that problem is because it's trying to get some attention. Remember, your unconscious mind can't speak to you with words. So it's your unconscious mind thinking, I need help here, get me help. I'm going to give you driving anxiety until you sort this out because you need to go and get professional help. And then some idiot comes along and says, I can help you conquer your fear of driving. You're not conquering anything, you're just making it worse by fighting something that wants to help you. So then the problem thinks, well, you're not listening to me, so I know, instead of driving anxiety, I'm going to make you scared of trains, flying, I'm going to give you insomnia, I'm going to start you smoking, I'm going to make you gain weight. And the problem can get worse and worse until you listen and get professional help, where we go back, we trace what the real cause is, what's often known as the root cause of the problem. And when you find this root cause, it's an incredible, amazing moment. I've had people who are speechless for like 5-10 minutes, they just can't speak. They're crying, they're screaming. I've had people jumping up and down, pulling their hair out. I had one man whose glasses fell off. He had such a big reaction. His glasses went flying off. People cannot believe when they find out what the problem really is. And the way I respond to this, because I've been through all this myself as a client, I've done about 30, 40, probably 50 sessions as a client, so I can experience this myself. And I regularly practice with other therapists. so I know what my clients are going through. And when I've done this, the way I experience it is laughter. I just could not stop laughing when I found out what the cause was. No way you telling me that is why I've got this problem in my life now. Nothing to do with driving, this was something else. But when you find out what the cause is, you'll either be stunned, shocked, amazed. Some people are scared, some people cry. I've had some horrific things come up where people have taken the fear of driving and we've gone to some very dark places and they've realised things happened to them as a child that they weren't aware of, and that gets very, very deep. So I don't want to put you off, but it can go to some dark places, but most of the time it doesn't, and we can deal with whatever comes up and we can work through it, and you can overcome your fear of driving. Check out these videos on the screen now for more help overcoming your fear of driving, and if you'd like to work with me one-to-one online, get in touch with me through my website firstdrive.com, and there'll be a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you again soon for more videos.